I didn't flinch when the HOA president slammed her palm on the table and screamed that my brother was trespassing. I didn't argue or raise my voice. Their lawyer picked it up first, flipped through the first few pages, and went pale. He knew exactly what it meant before anyone else in the room did. The shouting stopped, the air shifted, and for once, the entire HOA board sat in silence. My brother didn't even speak. He didn't need to. His badge, half covered by his jacket, spoke louder than anything I could have said. At that moment, they realized the game they thought they were playing was over. It hadn't always been like that. When I first bought the cabin, my intentions couldn't have been more simple. I wasn't looking for power, conflict, or even much attention. The property had belonged to my grandfather, and when it passed down to me, I thought of it as a retreat from the noise of everyday life. The cabin itself wasn't fancy weathered wood siding, a tin roof that rattled pleasantly during summer storms, and a small dock that reached out into the lake like a handshake. For me, it was peace. I'd spend mornings on that dock with coffee, watching the fog lift off the water, and evenings tinkering in the workshop shed, repairing old fishing rods or fixing up the outboard motor. It was the sort of place where time felt slower, where neighbors waved instead of complained, or so I thought. I had no ambitions to stand out. I just wanted to quietly restore the place, fish with my brother on weekends, and maybe grow old somewhere my phone didn't matter. The trouble began over something so absurd. I honestly thought it was a mistake at first. My brother had driven up one weekend, parked his truck at the end of the gravel path, and wandered down to the dock with a rod and tackle box. He had barely cast his first line when one of the HOA board members stormed over from across the lake. Sutin Abut. Unauthorized access. She pointed at him like he was some sort of criminal. Later that day, I found a bright orange violation notice taped to my door, accusing me of allowing trespassers on HOA-controlled property. The kicker was that they didn't even own the water or the shoreline. The original deed from my grandfather, S-time spelled out lake rights clearly. At first, I laughed. How could they police fishing on my own dock? But the letters kept coming. They escalated into threats of fines, warnings about revoked community privileges, and hints that they could involve law enforcement if I didn't comply. That was the first time my stomach sank, not from fear, from the realization that these people actually believed their own nonsense. My instinct was to I wrote emails, polite and direct, citing the deed that gave me lake access. I invited the board president over for coffee to discuss it. I even offered to show them the original survey maps stored in my cabin. Each time, I was either ignored, mocked, or met with even bolder threats. At one point, they claimed they had the authority to revoke my access to the dock entirely, even though it was physically attached to my land. I realized I was being stonewalled, not because they had a case, but because they thought intimidation alone would win. It was around then that something in me shifted. I stopped believing I could reason with them. I stopped writing friendly emails, and I started spending late nights with stacks of property law books and county records sprawled across my dining table. My brother noticed the change before anyone else. He'd walk in, see me, surrounded by paper, and just nod. Ik know, primera wa, esse ain't angry anymore. I was calculating. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. The HOA was bluffing, but they had gotten so used to nobody calling their bluff that they acted like kings. I pulled the original land surveys from the county archives, some of them dating back to the late 1960s, and traced the parcel lines down to the inch. The lake wasn't theirs. The dock wasn't theirs. In fact, several of their own common areas were encroaching onto land that technically belonged to private owners who, never contested it. I began documenting every violation notice, photographing every taped letter, and recording every board meeting I could attend. Meanwhile, the neighbors grew quieter around me. People who used to wave from their porches started avoiding eye contact, worried that siding with me would put a target on their back. My family felt it too. My wife hated checking the mailbox, because it was always another threat, another fine, another manufactured problem. And yet, through those long nights, I knew I was building something. Every ordinance, every statute, every historical deed was another piece of armor. I didn't say it out loud, but I think my brother understood exactly what I was doing, and that's when the irony kicked in. The HOA thought they were catching me off guard by calling 911 the next time my brother came to fish on the dock. I watched from the porch as two board members stood there smugly, telling the responding officer that my brother was a trespasser. What they didn't know, couldn't he have known, was that my brother was Destiny. A visitor? He was an FBI field agent, on active assignment in the region. He hadn't said anything because he didn't need to. When the officer asked for ID, my brother handed over his credentials, and the conversation died on the spot. Still, he kept it low-key. He didn't flash the badge around or pull rank. He let them stew in their own ignorance, while I quietly prepared my real play. That play unfolded at the next HOA board meeting, the one where they thought they were going to formally fine me for repeated trespass violations. I walked in with a binder under my arm and my brother by my side. They were already on edge, whispering when they saw him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. When the president tried to shout me down, I simply opened the binder and slid the federal case folder across the table. Inside was not only proof of my property rights, but also documentation of their repeated harassment of a federal officer in the course of his duties. The silence that followed was priceless. Their lawyer read just far enough to realize how deep in trouble they were, then leaned back and whispered something to the president. Her face fell. She looked around the room for backup, but none of the other board members dared meet her eye. They had finally realized the truth. Not only had they been wrong, but they had been harassing the one person they could not afford to harass. The fallout was swift. Within 2 months, the HOA president resigned. 2 other board members followed quietly, each citing personal reasons, though everyone knew the truth. The fines were rescinded, the violation letters vanished, and the official HOA records were quietly amended to correct their false claims about lake ownership. The neighborhood grew noticeably quieter. Some neighbors offered careful apologies, delivered with awkward half-smiles. Others just avoided me altogether, pretending the whole saga had never happened. I didn't need their validation. The silence was enough. Now, when I drive through, they either wave politely or look away. No one dares tape anything to my door. No one mentions the dock. And my brother still comes by to fish, though these days he doesn't even bother bringing his badge. He doesn't need to. The lake is ours. The cabin is ours. And the peace I wanted in the first place is back. Quieter, maybe even sharper than before. Funny thing is, I never set out to destroy the HOA. I just wanted to be left alone. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence and patience can be sharper than any argument. And now, finally, they understand that too.